when I started messing around with Unity, that's when I was like, oh, okay, I could put something out there.
Ben Clothier, Final Outpost lead developer and CTO of Exabyte Games.
There have been countless suggestions which we've been like, okay, we should probably put that in the game, or this would be fun to put in, but we can't.
How would you say your working relationship with Sam is?
At least one person say to me before, like, how can you work with your brother?
Share some lessons or insights.
Watch some tutorials, do some courses, apply that. If believing that the game is going to be published is going to motivate you to do that, great. At least what I'm doing, when you're on this small scope, you have to be able to do everything. I want us to be a little corner of the industry that genuinely cares about games, right? And being a bit more ethical, I guess, in the way that we monetize games. As I said before, 1.6 is going to be a big visual overhaul for the UI, and that's one thing that I'm very excited for.
Welcome everyone to the second episode of the Final Outpost podcast. Today I'm joined by Ben Clothier, Final Outpost lead developer and CTO of Exabyte Games. How are you doing today, Ben?
Not bad, yeah.
Good. Firstly, if any of our listeners are unaware of what you do, can you introduce yourself to our listeners and share a bit about your background and role as the lead developer of Final Outpost?
So as Ewan says, I'm the director of technology here at Exabyte Games. So what I do is I make the game, which is fun. So day to day, we're using the Unity game engine. Once we've designed what we want to change about the game, for example, at the beginning, designing the game in its entirety, we take those ideas and it's a bit of programming, a bit of art, everything. I basically put it together within Unity, and we ship the game from there, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. You obviously did a degree in computer science at university, which opens the doors to various career paths, including roles like a data analyst or software engineer. Was game development like always the ultimate aspiration for you, or have you envisioned like other career paths along the way?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't always in my head. In fact, I think it's only when I discovered Unity that I was like, oh, I can make games, which is kind of strange to think about because I've been playing games my whole life. I even made a few games at computer science A level, and I still didn't even think like that's a career path. So yeah, when I started messing around with Unity, that's when I was like, oh, okay, I could put something out there. And that's when it properly began, I guess. And not long after that, started on Final Outpost.
Yeah. Okay. You spoke about obviously the projects that you might have worked on. Is there any in particular that you worked on at university, and did that lead to like a better knowledge maybe of programs like Unity?
Yeah, I mean, at university I was already working on Final Outpost, so it was so I started with Unity when I was supposed to be revising for my A levels, as all great things start like that, don't they? Procrastination. So I think from there I started messing around trying to play around with different game ideas. I think Sam mentioned last time that he sort of made Final Outpost because like he thought these features were cool. He just wanted to make a game and then see where that went. For me, once I discovered Unity, I was like, okay, I'm putting something out there, which is like the classic naive, like, you think you can make a game, yes I can, fails. But I don't know if I'd have the motivation to do it if I didn't genuinely believe I was about to put out a game. But really what I was doing was just copying existing games to learn how to use Unity, which is the best way to learn. But at the same time, I was convinced that I was making a real game. I've worked on, because I think the original project which I got into Unity with was I just wanted to do I don't know if anyone's played Company of Heroes, but it's like World War II RTS. I basically just wanted to copy that. Started doing that, realized, and well, of course, I started with the 3D modeling and art approach, which is not how you start a project, and that failed pretty quickly. And so I did a Udemy course on Unity, watching tutorials. A second course, I think, on specifically on first-person shooters in Unity. They marketed themselves as advanced courses. They're very much beginner courses, like for like getting into it. Definitely aimed at people who are convinced that they're about to make a full game. And so I tried to make it like a TTT ripoff as well. I got a lot further with that. I even had like working multiplayer and everything, but absolutely nowhere near close to making it a full release because the scope is just way too big.
Cool. Now let's talk about the first thing you did for Final Outpost. Sam asked you to make pixel art for the game.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we have a dedicated graphic artist in Harriet creating new assets of pixel art. Was there any time where you envisioned maybe that ever happening? Did you believe Sam's vision from the get-go that this game was obviously for him? He mentioned in the last podcast that he never saw it going anywhere really. It was just obviously a fun project for him,
right? Yeah.
Did you see something in it from the start?
To be honest, I don't think I was really conscious of it in its entirety. I think I knew that Sam was making a game, and obviously he wanted art, and I was happy to do that. But at the same time, I don't think I'd ever really... I must have played it, but I didn't really... I saw it as his hobby. What he was doing, he was willing to give me a little bit of money for it. So, but no, I never. At that point, I still hadn't thought about game development as a career, so I also didn't see that, I guess.
Okay, let's talk about sort of the development path. Previously, you've obviously worked with different people on development of Final Outpost. In those situations, how have you found leading a team, and what are the challenges you may have faced along the way?
Difficult one to answer, because although I am technically, I was technically leading the Ben and Ross, for example, who were originally putting the game together with me. It never really felt like that because, well, we're all uni students. I'm doing exactly the same thing as them, which is coding. And we all knew what the task was, which was to essentially copy Sam's version of the game that's in Swift and put it in Unity. There wasn't any need for leadership necessarily. We were just kind of getting the job done.
You could let them get on with their stuff.
Yeah,
you sort of had specialization, I guess, on the.
Yeah.
Each had your own thing. Obviously, Ross made the skill tree, that sort of thing. And
yeah, I would say in general, not a lot of specialization, because with that sort of task, I guess everyone needs to be able to do everything. Yeah. But yeah, Ben, for example, tended to do the API side of things, like connecting to App Store and Google Store, doing the translation stuff, and whereas I think Ross tended to be more sort of arty graphics and just general systems, and I was also I was doing a bit of everything, just sort of
okay, let's talk about one of those initial big updates. Let's talk about 1.2. I didn't mention it last time with Sam, but we'll just talk a little bit about it maybe. And obviously expanded the game to a new player base in Android. However, there were obviously some post-release issues. What valuable lessons did you learn from that experience, do you think?
Plenty. More as a company, I'd say. Well, yeah, if anyone doesn't know, the issues were that we set a deadline and the game it was just about ready, but it hadn't been tested, pretty much. Obviously, apart from the small amounts of testing we've done on the way to just make sure what we've just done actually works, but very much not tested enough, and it was buggy. It didn't really work. But so that release was rocky, but we got it back together pretty quickly. So in terms of things learned, is not setting a hard deadline, and obviously as we're still learning this, really. I guess is that however long you think it's going to take, it's probably not going to take that amount of time. It's going to
times it by 3.
Yeah. Well, the further away that deadline or estimated amount of time is, the more inaccurate it will be. Yeah. So I think what we're sort of learning to do now is to be a bit more incremental with it. Or if you do set a deadline, also set a time to review that deadline, just to make sure we're not cornering ourselves.
Yeah. And don't announce it to the public too much.
Yeah. Yes.
Let's talk. Okay, we talked about the buggier release that we may have had. Let's talk about 1.5. A lot smoother. Released over a month ago now. From a developer's standpoint, how do you keep the gameplay experience fresh and engaging for players over time?
I guess everyone likes more content, which is what 1.5 was focused on, right? So I mean, yeah, in comparison to 1.2, 1.5 has been a massive success. Just because of how smooth the update was. I think maybe one bug, which we fixed within a few days of release. I guess the aim of 1.5, right, was to make the game what we always wanted it to be, or get it to a place which we're really happy with, content wise and mechanically. I guess it's difficult, right? Because we in a game like Final Outpost, I think Sam said last time as well, there's so much potential, so much stuff that you could add. But the way the game is, you will always reach the end of the content. And so people will always want more. So 1.5, improving existing mechanics and features, and also adding a lot of depth. But it's still a fairly short game, right? So people still want more. So we want to add content, but at some point it's got to stop.
Yeah, I think we got to a point where it's what, yeah, like you said, it's what we wanted from the start, right?
Yeah.
So if we're going to bring anything else now, and this leads on to my next question, to be fair, balancing, adding new content and features, but also maintaining the stability and the performance of the game.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to it's a mobile game, right? So you can't stretch the imagination too far. So yeah, that's...
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess maybe just tell us, the balance of adding new content and obviously maintaining that stability of the game.
Yeah, there are a lot of different things to consider, because it's not as easy as just every update's just going to add new content. Obviously, you've got your bug fix updates, and so 1.5 was content update, and 1.6 is going to be a visual update predominantly. But yeah, there are the other things to consider is how much time we have and money we have. So we like adding content doesn't necessarily enable us to carry on working on the project. Well, at some point we're going to have to move on to something different to try and stay afloat, I guess. But it depends. That's something that you just play by ear, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk a little bit about so we're talking about the development path anyway, but maybe share some memorable moments or milestones in the development of Final Outpost.
Well, yeah, so 1.2 is obviously very memorable.
Maybe for the wrong reasons.
So the original development of 1.2 was that is putting into Unity. That was over the course of the summer after first year, pretty much, and that was really fun. Just working with Ben and Ross, and I guess it's kind of, as I was saying, the easiest way to learn in Unity, I think, is to just copy existing games, right? And what we were doing was copying an existing game, which was Sam's game, obviously, and just so putting it in a new engine and then adding a load of new stuff. So it's not super intense, and we're just having fun with it. Obviously, it gets intense once you start thinking about release deadline. So I enjoyed putting the game together with those two a lot. 1.3 is pretty foggy for me because I'm in the thick of university now. Yeah. So I didn't have much time to work on 1.3. In fact, a lot of the content for 1.3 was already complete in that summer after the release of 1.2, but then it took us another 6 months to actually get it out, because I was at university, and that's how long it took to just get it to the finish line, which is pretty crazy to think about. And then obviously October I start working full-time after graduating, and I guess I've done more work on Final Outpost than I ever had before working full-time, which is weird to think about now. Like the amount of hours has already overtaken the original amount of time that it took to put the game together and get to 1.3 just to get to 1.5.
I was going to ask about that gap. Obviously, we have a big gap between 1.3 and 1.4 from 2022 to February of this year where we released 1.4. Obviously, you were in your final year, right? So a lot was going on, so it makes perfect sense. And now we've got such a good roadmap of development that there's a lot going on now, which is good. So I guess what that you talked about that as a memorable moment. Maybe what's been the most rewarding aspect of development itself? Like what feature you enjoyed the most in installing, or just any change you made to the game?
I think the most rewarding part is always, for me anyway, coming up with an idea, something to add to the game, something to change about the game, and then putting that in the game and then being like, that was a good idea.
And seeing people, so I'm guessing, seeing player feedback.
For example, in 1.2, the original plan was just have a straight copy of the game, just copy it over, done. But then as we went along, we're like, well, we're in Unity now. We can. There's so much more we can do, and the main one there that I remember is putting in the lighting at nighttime. I was like, there are 2D lights in Unity. Why don't we just chuck some lights on the buildings? And we were like, wow, that added a lot to the nighttime anyway, atmosphere wise. That sort of thing. And I'm still doing Like you still get bits of that now. Like we've got, for example, we've got a plan for each update, but then while you're making that, you're like, oh, we could do this instead or that instead. And it's fun just putting those things into place, I guess.
Yeah, cool. Now, I asked Sam this same question last time, so I'm going to ask it again. I just want to know your opinion too. Do you think Final Outpost leans more towards simulation or more towards casual gameplay? And how do you, as lead developer, strike a balance between the two?
Yeah, it's definitely a mix, right? And in some ways, it's become more of a simulation, and in some ways, it's become less. So, for example, in 1.4, I think it was, we were overhauling how food works, and we realized that a lot of the frustration with the food system before was because we tried to do it too simulation-y. We're like, well, everyone gets fed at the same time, and if you run out of food, everyone starts starving at the same rate. The problem with that is then once everyone reaches the threshold for starvation, everyone dies at the same time, which is super frustrating for a player. So we actually strayed away from the simulation there in 1.4 to make it more fun, basically. So it's and then in 1.5, for example, the zombies have gone from a completely artificial way of moving to a more realistic, I put air quotes because they're zombies, but more natural, I'll go with natural way of moving. So before they would just have a box to walk around in, and they would just pick random positions and walk to them within that box, and then over time they'd have a random chance of deciding to go to the wall, which is not very realistic. Now in 1.5, there's no box. They just spawn on a certain side of the map, and they have a little waiting to come towards your base, and they'll just wander around in random directions smoothly and everything. And if they hear noise, now instead of deciding if they hear noise, that before they would just go straight to the wall, whereas now they're just attracted by the noise. Like they start going towards the noise, but then after a certain point they won't care about it or they'll forget about it, and they'll only latch onto the wall when they're at the wall. The movement's all a lot more natural and simulation like, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. As lead developer, could you elaborate maybe on the significance of player feedback in shaping the gaming survival experience?
Survival experience?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. So specifically,
I guess maybe people have their opinions on what survival really is, or a survival game.
Right.
Especially in our Discord, we have obviously a few reoccurring people that pop up and maybe suggest features or suggest feedback, and they have their own idea of what maybe a survival game should look like. I mean, so I guess, what is the significance of those sort of opinions?
I mean, suggestions in general are very important. There have been countless suggestions which we've been like, okay, we should probably put that in the game, or this would be fun to put in but we can't, to suggestions which were like, this would just make it Clash of Clans, so we're not going to do that. But mostly the feedback is really helpful. But I don't know whether it's because people have a certain idea of a survival game in their mind, or whether they're just trying to push us towards the game that they really want to play or to exist, right? I think a recurring Discord user, we set up a fan art channel, right? And he put in all his fan art from since the game's release, because he's been around for all this time. and there were at least like 4 things in there which were, I don't know whether you call them predictions or whether they actually influence us to do those things. But there were 4 things that were basically in the game now. Some of those definitely are in the game because he suggested them. It's very helpful because ultimately they're the people that want to play they're the people that are on the receiving end of the game. So you want to put in those things, as long as you keep it within scope and it still being the game that you want to make, obviously.
Leading on from that then, what do you think from your personal standpoint, what would be the one feature you'd love to bring to Final Outpost, and maybe sort of discuss why that may or may not be possible?
Thing is, because I'm making the game, if a feature is out of the scope, I don't like it. So for example, like multiplayer sounds great, right? But there's absolutely no chance of that happening in Final Outpost. Because it's something that needs to be done at the start. But that sort of idea, like, I recognise that it would be fun, but I don't like the idea because it's way too out of scope. There are lots of little bits that I want to be in the game, and most of them are going in. It's not really. I don't really have one feature in mind. But as I said before, 1.6 is going to be a big visual overhaul for the UI, and that's one thing that I'm very excited for. And actually, is probably top of the list for me in things that I'd like to see improved in the game, and it will be.
And that the visual side of things is kind of, except maybe a few layout changes, it has been the same since release, which is crazy to think.
And actually, this is another thing which player feedback has been very impactful on, because we actually had, I think we came up with like a rough UI style for 1.6 maybe a year ago, maybe more. I'm not sure. During the 1.3 era, probably, and we started doing little bits of that and teasing that sort of thing. And someone was criticizing that style, saying that it didn't really fit with the theme, which is like a gritty survival zombie thing, right? And it looked a bit too much like Clash of Clans or
Heyday.
Heyday, I think they said, yeah. And initially we were like, no, look, this art looks great, right? Yeah. And then we let that hang around for a while, and we really thought about it. We're like, no, they are actually right. We need the UI to fit with the theme of the game. So we're now in a completely different direction. The art is still very much the same style, but with a different twang, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Now you're in a unique position, I'd say, in which obviously you have creative direction in the development of Final Outpost. You have like a team around you to make other like strategic decisions in other areas, like myself, Sam, Harriet on artwork. Is there anything you think you do differently, knowing that you're working with your brother and mutual friends, rather than if you were working with random people, for example?
I have no idea really, because I've never worked in the actual industry. I say the actual industry. I guess we're technically part of the industry now. But yeah, I don't know. Because as I said, I've only really worked with friends. Yeah. So I find it I don't know whether it would be any different, but all I can say about working with friends is it's very easy to communicate, because if you disagree about something, you just say it, and because we're all equals, we can all discuss that and like have a very sensible conversation about it and all come to an agreement, right? That being said, I don't think we disagree on things that often. We always generally come to an agreement about everything.
Yeah. As mentioned in our previous episodes, Final Outpost obviously runs in the family. How would you say your working relationship with Sam is?
It's good.
You say what you want here. You know, he has. By the way, for all the listeners out there, he hasn't got a gun to his head. All right, so everything is good.
I can say anything I want about Sam.
Say anything you want.
That was my working relationship with him.
Yeah.
As I said, like we can if we disagree on something, we can just very easily just like chat about it. Both say our perspective on it, and we generally come to an agreement. Don't know if there's anything more to say than that. It's just kind of works. I've had at least one person say to me before, like, how can you work with your brother? I think they said that him and his brother, like, they just don't get along. Which is interesting because, as Sam said before, like when we were younger, we really didn't get along.
So yeah, he said that quote, for the first 14 or 15 years of your life, you were just enemies. Enemies is a strong word, I'd say. I don't know whether he was probably obviously exaggerating there. Is there anything you'd like to say to that in response?
He's not wrong. I think yeah. Again, I don't really know why.
Was it that kind of just normal brother rivalry? Obviously, you're pretty similar in age, so. I
mean, he was very annoying, and so was I. So it just, and again, like, you know, sharing the computer. Both want to play games. As to why it stopped, I think he wasn't sure, was it? Why it just suddenly was fine. My theory is that as soon as he moved out to go to uni, we weren't in each other's space anymore.
Yeah, okay.
So we were just able to actually get along. Because we always, it was very much like your classic, like, enemies, but also you have a lot of fun at the same time. Yeah, okay. Like, it goes back and forth, right? And then once you moved out, it's just the good bit.
It wasn't like pure hatred.
No. I do, I do remember kicking a Lego bulldozer to pieces.
You tried to kill him, didn't you?
What?
Did you not?
No, he tried to kill me.
He tried to kill you.
He tried to kill me.
Sorry, yeah. I apologize.
I've been told. I think there was I think this was when I was actually,
by the way, just to listen, this wasn't when they were like 12 or 13. It wasn't you got a knife out and wanted to kill him. It was accidental, you know.
I think I was in, what were those bouncy baby things called?
Oh, God. Baby rockers? I can't remember.
You like hang them up on a door, and then you put the baby in it, and he bounces up and down for a while. I think I've only been told this story. I was in one of them, obviously, basically a baby, and my mum walks into the room, and Sam just has like cling film over my face or something. The other one that I distinctly remember is, he didn't try to kill me, but I don't even know how this happened or how this happens at all. He put a toilet seat over my head. I don't know where we were. I don't know why there was just a toilet seat lying around. And I don't know why he put it on my head. But it got stuck. And there was a whole ordeal that we bring up every now and then about having to butter my neck up and try and get the toilet seat off. So I haven't forgiven him for that.
Yeah, we went off on a bit of a tangent there
Yeah.
about how Sam is a dangerous person. So,
I don't. Now I talk about it. It does seem like a very one-sided
Yes.
thing. I feel like, I'm the victim.
Yes, yeah. There you go. We've found our answers there, guys. So, Sam's at fault for everything. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about maybe for those developers who are just starting out, share some lessons or insights that you've gained from developing Final Outpost itself that others might find valuable.
So, as I said, Final Outpost is really my first proper game and my first published game. Before that, I'd only really done small personal projects. As I mentioned before, my first few Unity projects, convinced I was going to release them, which was not going to happen. So my general advice is, like, even though I'd consider those first two Unity projects failures because my actual goal was to release them, really what they were learning experiences, because what you want to do is watch some tutorials, do some courses, apply that, just iterate over that for a while, right? And if believing that the game is going to be published is going to motivate you to do that, great. Even if it is naive. If you do want to actually complete a game, right, and you're starting out, what you definitely need to do is limit the scope of the game, right? Because you get another classic thing is for, you always hear about someone who's trying to make a first-person shooter competitive game, multiplayer, as their first proper project. Maybe there are people that can do that. I'd say they're getting lucky. You want to have a small scope, something which is genuinely achievable. So with Sam, for example, I think he mentioned because he was working in Xcode with Swift, he was essentially forced to keep the scope small because it's not like a really versatile tool. Whereas maybe the issue with Unity is you can do so much with it, which probably, is where a lot of this believing that you're about to publish something when you're like barely beginning comes from. So like, for example, like instead of making an FPS, try and make an FPS game, you make like a little arcade game or like a what they called party game, like a local, like you'll see couch game, that's what it's called. That sort of thing, just, and this is what game jams are great for as well, right? Because it forces you to do something small scope that you can achieve in a very short amount of time. And then if you can get good at making small prototypes like that in game jams, then you can just like increase the time window by a certain amount of months, and then you might have a proper small game, right? I don't know if that was coherent, but
makes sense. No. There is a common misconception, I think, with game developers that they are, for maybe people that have no idea what you do, robotic like programmers that are glued to their screens all day. So I want to know, are there any sort of misconceptions about game development that you're aware of, and any that you'd like to debunk right now for those listeners out there who don't have a clue about game development?
I think, it's interesting because there are definitely a lot of stereotypes about a computer scientist, for example. And what I've assumed is that game developers get bundled into that, right? But really, game development's very arty and creative. I guess when you're in a big company, maybe you get just pure programmers, right? And then you have the art team and everything. But at least what I'm doing, when you're on this small scope, you have to be able to do everything, which is art, programming, design, etc. So what do I want to debunk? I don't know. Yeah, it's very creative, I feel. Which maybe some people don't realize, but then that might just be an assumption of mine.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think maybe you have to just use that scientific side of your brain, and there's no use of this side, and you're just coding, and it's very mathy and that sort of thing. But really,
I mean, the most complicated you'll get, unless you're purposely trying to get more complicated on the math side of things, is trigonometry and calculus, right? Which is, I think that's GCSE level, right? I don't know. Which you can now just ask like ChatGPT to do, or Wolfram Alpha. So it's not incredibly mathsy. It's, well, I mean, it might be an obvious statement, but it's very logical because it's programming. But then, yeah, the great thing about game development is it also brings in all that creative aspect. So if you like doing art, great, as long as you're not only doing art, because that you're not going to make a game if you're only doing art. But yeah, I think as Sam said, a lot of people hear about programming, right, and they just assume that you have to be like a really mathsy person to want to do that, or to be able to do that, which I don't think is the case. Probably the most difficult part of programming is fighting and wrestling with all the niche pieces of software that want to do things one way and not another way, or just not working at all. That's the difficult part. The actual programming part is, I think, very doable.
Another thing I'm thinking of is maybe a misconception that game development is a lazy job because you are at your desk all day.
Whoa, I haven't heard this.
Or maybe you don't clean your room. Are you a tidy person?
I'm a tidy person.
Good,
but
good.
Maybe I'm not. I think I might
be an outlier.
I might be an outlier there. Sometimes not a run, a walk.
A walk.
Yeah.
Outside. Yeah.
I don't know. I've not seen most computer scientists' rooms, so I don't know how messy they are. But I would be surprised if it was much more than your average uni student. There definitely are people like that, right? Who don't come out their room and because they're programming all day, and fair play to them. They do what they want. I'm not one of those people. Although saying that, I'm working from home now, which means I'm not getting out of the house probably as much as I should, but I'm trying, as I said, with walks and stuff. So maybe it is true. I don't know.
Not debunking anything. All of the stereotypes about these guys.
It's true. It's true, everyone.
Okay. A bit of a controversial question now. I'm gonna. Do you think if Final Outpost wasn't successful,
right,
from this point onwards, let's say, so obviously we've still got the company. Do you think your motivation levels as game developer would drop? And first thing you'd think of is let's move on, or do you think you'd come back to it even if it wasn't profitable?
You mean if I was putting all this work in Final Outpost and it just wasn't being successful?
It wasn't working.
It's difficult because obviously I'd love to say that I'd carry on doing what I'm doing and just try and put stuff out there, but financially that wouldn't happen for me, especially not in London. So I think the top of my list would probably be getting a job in the industry rather than trying to start my own thing, because I think if it wasn't for Sam, I wouldn't be an indie developer probably, in that I didn't even think about making games. I wouldn't even have thought about making a company.
Yeah. It's a very competitive industry, right?
Yeah. So I think I would be sending my CV to lots of games companies, in the hope that I'd get something to get me some experience. Because I think we're in a very unique situation, right? Which is we do have this game which has been fairly successful, and so we're just able to carry on doing what we're doing without having to get a job in the industry or a different job, right? Which is a very delicate thing. So I'm very happy in this situation right now. It's very exciting. And so if I wasn't in this situation, I'd probably like to be in this situation, but whether I'd be able to do that, I don't know. But most likely, yeah, I'd be sending my CV to games companies, I think.
Alrighty. We did a quickfire question segment last time with Sam. I'm going to repeat the same thing with you. It's a bit different this time though. Last time we did it on maybe future features that could be in the game.
Yeah.
This time I'm just going to fire some developer oriented questions.
Oh god.
Okay. And you can only answer yes or no. I don't want any expansion.
No maybes either.
No maybes.
Oh god. Okay.
Definitive answers. Okay.
Okay. Well, take what I say with a pinch of salt. I don't know what's coming.
All right.
If I say yes,
I don't think there's anything on here.
It's controversial.
I don't think there's anything on here that is controversial.
Okay, right,
it's pretty basic. Have you ever pulled an all-nighter to meet a game development deadline?
No.
Ooh.
I'd love to elaborate on that, but
have you ever implemented an Easter egg in Final Outpost?
Yes.
Oh. If anyone isn't aware of that, there you go. Would you consider adding multiplayer functionality to Final Outpost? You've already...
No.
Do you still find gaming as interesting and enjoyable as you did when you were younger?
Playing games?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you believe that video games can be considered a form of art?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you think mobile gaming will continue to grow in popularity?
Ooh.
So I guess no there, it's going to be stagnant, or yes.
Yeah,
still going to grow.
I don't get an I don't know or a maybe. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you off with that. That's basically a maybe, right? So
I've a loophole in the system.
Yeah.
Tone of voice.
Maybe,
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced a developer's block when working on a game?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you believe games have a positive impact on mental health?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do you believe there are still innovative and exciting games being released today?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I kind of do want you to elaborate on that. You were so
you want
sure.
me to elaborate?
You were so sure on that. You don't think that there are copies of copies being made now almost?
I think it's easy to think that, right? Because you look at all most people are watching what the big studios are doing, right?
Yeah.
And medium-sized studios. There's obviously, I would call it an epidemic right now, right? Where all these big studios are churning out the same game every time pretty much. But that is just how it is, right? But it acts as a distraction for the other. Yes. there's loads of stuff coming out. Yeah, it's probably, the weight of good games is probably heading towards indie games.
Yes.
But there are still lots of big games coming out which are good. It's just, I think it is easy to get caught up in the idea that everything's collapsing.
Yes.
But especially indie games, there's loads of stuff coming out.
Okay. Cool. Have you ever played a game that made you cry?
No.
Not the first season of The Walking Dead? That got me.
I don't remember it. I'm not a big walk. Oh, you mean the game? Right.
Lee, yeah.
No, I've never really cried at movies or TV or games.
Okay, not a crime. Okay.
So it's not anything about games there that's the issue.
Yeah. Okay. Do you enjoy playing mobile games in your free time?
No.
Interesting.
I hate that you haven't allowed me to elaborate on that. I just seem like an asshole now.
Yeah, I love that. Are you excited about the future of Final Outpost and the direction it's heading?
Yeah,
good. Hope you wouldn't say no to that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. On to the future of Final Outpost. So, exciting times ahead, as you just said. You answered yes to that question. So, what's next for Final Outpost? And give us a glimpse. You've already said about 1.6, but maybe give a few teasers today that people can get excited about, and future updates beyond 1.6.
Mm-hmm. I think, to be honest, as much as I want to say, I think Sam said a lot of it, and it's changed a little bit since then. Yeah. So obviously we're doing 1.6, which is the visual overhaul, and then I think Sam said last time that we were planning on adding a pro purchase or something like that lets you have a the intended experience if we didn't have to worry about monetization, right? So you pay for something and then you get the game, you get a version of the game which doesn't have the in-app purchases in or the pay to continue thing. So we've developed that idea a little bit further, and I don't know if this is saying too much, but we're planning on releasing a separate version of the game rather than it being an in-app purchase. We're gonna hopefully release a separate version of the game, which is the pro version, and so if you're not the type of person that likes the sort of in-app purchase freemium model, right, then you can just go straight to that version, which will be a pay up front thing, and you get the I suppose it will be what we want the game to be if we didn't have to worry about surviving in the mobile industry, right? And then I think Sam also said this last time.
He did. I know what you're going to say. You can say.
Yeah. We're planning a PC release of that pro version. But again, we've not started work on these things yet. So, but that is the plan.
Okay, I'm on to my final question. So, could you give us maybe a glimpse into the future games we might have discussed, the genres that they're in? And it's the same question I asked last time.
Yeah,
I'm always going to end on this one. What's our role as Exabyte Games in shaping the gaming industry?
Yeah. So future games and our role in So in terms of future games, I'll say the same thing as Sam last time. I think I know you want us to say stuff, but yeah, we're doing prototypes, and we've got a few ideas in the work, but nothing that we've decided to do. But we want to do a PC game predominantly, right? But I don't think this will be something that we seriously start thinking about until we are confident that we're coming to the end of the Final Outpost development. Glimpses into genre, who knows, because we haven't decided on an idea, but we're always going to have a bias towards management, aren't we? Yeah. And whatever theme excites us, I guess. Role in the industry. Obviously there are a lot of issues in the industry right now, so I think in my opinion, at the very least, I think I want us to be a little corner of the industry that genuinely cares about games, right? And how we and caring about the community, right? So not being a bit more ethical, I guess, in the way that we monetize games, and not collecting data, that sort of thing. And obviously trying to avoid the pitfalls which a lot of the big companies are now, right? Which is dodgy deadlines, dodgy games, that sort of thing. Just trying to do our best, basically. I don't know. I mean, I don't expect us necessarily to change the industry, but I like the idea of having our little corner of the industry, or I think Sam said last time, being a role model, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, we just want to make fun games, right, and not mess anyone around, I guess, whether that's consumers or employees. Yeah.
Okay. I will say that we are going to Gamescom again this year. So the next podcast will obviously, I think, we'll get a good idea of where the games industry is at post Gamescom, and our next podcast it'll be the three of us. I'll confirm that now, and I'm sure we'll talk about those topics in a lot more detail. But until then, that's a wrap for our podcast with Ben today. We appreciate every single person that's tuned into this podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation, make sure to hit that like button on YouTube, share it with your fellow Final Outpost players, and don't forget to subscribe for more insightful content from Final Outpost. Feel free to drop your thoughts and any questions in the comments below. Obviously, I'll be there to answer them. And press that notification bell so you're the first one to know when our next episode drops. There will be a few videos in the meantime, so make sure to just keep your eyes peeled. Until then, survivors, we'll catch you in the next one. Say your goodbyes, Ben.
See ya.
See ya.